The fuck would you say? Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. You can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Hey, looks like somebody figured out how to get some YouTube music, right? All right, so how's everybody doing? Just wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about this whole controversy because it's fascinating. It really, truly is. You know, these pictures that I was just flashing on the screen here, they are pictures of the 1976 female swim team from East Germany. And, you know, you can take a look at them, and I think it's quite obvious that there's something suspect, just their musculature and those types of things. So I want to just preface this with, you know, people with a transgender, people who are transgender, participating in the Olympics, unbeknownst to us, has probably happened for a long time. These women actually were, it's been found out that they were not actually biological males, but that they were, quote, doping. I don't know what the term means, doping. You know, it's different, I think, for different events. I know like oxygen or red blood cell packing and stuff like that can be a thing. But in this sense, doping, I think that they meant probably testosterone doping. That makes the most sense, right? So anyway, I'm showing this because it was a controversy in 1976. In 1998, the United States tried to appeal the decision. You know, it's kind of water under the bridge at this point, but you can go back and look in history of different winners of the Olympics that were females and see for yourself that some of them clearly look to be phenotypically, at least, male, meaning their physical characteristics and appearance appears to be male, and they're not even trying to hide anything. So it's really one of those things that's been around forever. I think it's more controversial now because transgenderism, as it's called, and I'll talk about the terms in a second, but transgenderism, as it's called, has become very much a fad, is what I'll call it. It's a fad, and it's in pop culture now. It's permeated all of our lives. And at the end of the day, it's a very small percentage of people, right? I think the crime of it is the transgendering of our youth. When children are going through puberty, they're already having enough time with what am I here for? Who am I? They're all very filled with ego. We all went through that stage. Some of us, like myself, remember it a lot more clearly than others, perhaps. But regardless, it's not a good time to offer a child the option to switch genders that would permanently disfigure them. Okay, you know, cutting, you know, doing what they call top surgery or bottom surgery, etc., and even giving the hormones. The American Pediatric Association has, you know, basically endorsed what lots of physicians have been doing in America for quite some time now. But I do think that's a decision that they will likely regret in the future. particularly now that there's many of these young kids who are coming forward with serious regrets. And I think they have, a legal lawsuit. I think they have a lawsuit, I really do, because it's reckless in my opinion. And for someone to be called bigoted or transphobic because they're stating what the clear and obvious danger is of doing this with children under the age of 18 is just an Orwellian byproduct. Okay. It's my opinion that transgenderism as a fad has really just come out to unstabilize our culture, destabilize our culture, and lead us into sort of the androgyny of becoming a transhuman and get us used to that. And that's my opinion. You may have others. This is what I'm saying is not meant to offend anyone, but if it does, that's up to you. That's the other thing is our modern culture. People are very sensitive and get offended a lot. And I don't really see what the crime is by being offended. Even the way we word the phrase, word phrases like take offense, being offense, you're taking ownership of that feeling, right? If you're taking ownership of a feeling, that means that you have the ability to change that feeling. Okay. Taking offense is a choice. So you choose to take offense. And I'm not saying I've never been offended, but I will say, particularly as I've gotten older, it's really pretty hard to offend me. People have called me all sorts of names. I've been spit at and punched when working. And, it's just one of those things that like you just choose to recognize that not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone is going to think you're a good person or you're kind. Not everybody's going to feel that way. And it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, really, does it really matter at the end of the day? That, again, it's a personal choice if you choose to be offended or be sensitive. I think that's different than finding something outrageous or, criminal. And that's what I feel about the current culture surrounding these types of issues. I studied psychology as an undergrad in the 90s, and the term transsexual was the term that was used. And scientifically, that's the term that's used often by more old school type people, like I guess I am. But it still makes sense. Transsexualism or a transsexual was someone who, first of all, it was very rare, supposedly, allegedly, back then, up until recently. However, transsexual was someone who was born one gender and transitioned to another gender. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but it could be surgically, could just be phenotypically the way they're presenting themselves. Okay. But they wanted dearly to be the opposite sex from what they were born. And, they had a hard time. There were just a few centers around the country that did surgery for this. And oftentimes they waited very long. It was expensive. It was a difficult road. These people felt like they were born in the wrong body. I always have had deep empathy for people like that because I just always try to imagine myself in their shoes. Imagine you were born, you were raised a female, but you always felt like there's something wrong. And as you got older, after you passed puberty, you're still looking at yourself saying, what's wrong with me? I feel like a man. I'm a boy. I feel like a boy. I feel like a man. I want to be a man. I want to present as a man. I want a girlfriend. But I'm not a lesbian, so that to me is that's something that I've long held a lot of sympathy and empathy for people in that position. And oftentimes people throughout history that felt that way had, they've committed suicide, or, when they have presented themselves as they feel inside, they've been ridiculed, they've been bullied, etc. And so, it's been a tough ride for those people. Now, transsexualism was the one term. Then we had transvestism or transvestite. Transvestite is a term that is not used really anymore. It's kind of one of those antiquated terms. RuPaul, for example, was a very popular transvestite who I recently found out is cousins with Cory Booker, the New Jersey state representative, which is hilarious. But anyway, only because Cory Booker. I'm not going to get into, regardless. If you understand what I'm saying, you do. It's not that deep. So RuPaul, a famous performer, transvestite. Transvestites were also people who, when you went to Vegas, they impersonated female stars. They're the female stars that were often impersonated were Marilyn Monroe and Cher and Judy. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on her last name. The woman from Wizard of the Oz. So these were transvestites. Now these people still exist, but oftentimes, now they're called drag queens, and the whole term has been sort of conflated with transgender, right? Transgender is a more broad term now, and I think from what I've just read that it encompasses people like RuPaul, but also encompasses people like Bruce Jenner or Caitlyn Jenner. So it sort of becomes very ambiguous, and it's my belief that's done purposefully, because when you start to confuse these things and change the definition of words, it causes people to talk more about it, allows people to explain why they're so offended. Then you can call people bigots, and it creates controversy and division, and none of it is really needed, in my opinion. But this is the world we live in, and there's not much we can do about it other than discuss it, right? Which is what I'm doing. So now that we've talked about that, transgender, transsexual, transvestitism, I just wanted to talk about what's currently happening, what brought me to discuss all of this. And that is a boxer in the Olympics, an Algerian boxer whose name is Imane Khelif. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And let me just share something else here. So here we go. Well, first we'll start off with this, okay? Let's start off with this. This was one day ago, and here's Imane Khelif. She files a complaint due to abuse over gender at the Paris Olympics. Olympic gold medal winning boxer Imane Khelif, who endured intense scrutiny about her gender throughout the Paris Games, has filed a formal legal complaint in which she says she was the victim of online abuse. In a statement posted Sunday to Instagram, Khelif's attorney, Nabil Boudi, said Khelif, who won the Olympic women's 66-kilogram boxing title on Friday, asked his legal firm to file a complaint with the Paris prosecutor's office on her behalf. Having just won a gold medal at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, boxer Imane Khelif has decided to lead a new fight, that of justice, dignity, and honor, Boudi said. Now, if I had read this prior to listening to Nate the lawyer, which is who brought this to my attention, he's great, by the way, if you don't watch him, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this person, you need to stop. Like, you shouldn't have been boxing a woman to begin with. It's completely unfair and barbaric. Of all the sports that a male transition to a woman could compete in, I feel like boxing is the most obvious one where the differences are seen. And it really just feels like a man is beating the shit out of a woman, and we're endorsing it. And so I think that's what makes this even more sort of triggering and controversial. Understand or know the full story, which is why reserving judgment and giving grace is oftentimes the best thing to do in these situations, or any situation where you feel triggered. There was that woman years back from McDonald's. I don't know if you remember this, but it was a big deal in the newspapers. Tort reform came about a little bit because of this, but basically she was an elderly woman, I think maybe in her 70s or 80s, who had ordered some McDonald's coffee and spilled it on her lap. And the claim was that she was, awarded like millions of dollars, and people were just like, this is ridiculous. This woman is just seeking money for bullshit and this and that. But I watched a fascinating documentary on it, and the reality is she did not win that much money. The jury may have awarded it to her, but I think on appeal she only ended up getting 100 or 200,000. And this woman deserved every penny of it. And the reason why is because the coffee was so hot. I forget the temperature, but it was so hot that it gave her second and third degree burns in her inner thighs and vaginal area, and she required multiple skin grafts, and her insurance was only covering, you know, up to a certain amount. And this woman lost her house over this. Okay, she suffered tremendously, and none of this was reported in the mainstream media at the time. And in fact, she didn't want to sue, but ultimately felt she had to because she couldn't afford her medical bills. And it turns out McDonald's was 100% at fault, because the temperature that they kept their coffee at the time was far beyond what the temperature regulations for hot beverages being served to the public is supposed to be. And because of this lawsuit, McDonald's instituted a lot of changes to their coffee policy, and required, you know, a maximum temperature, which is not one that's going to scald the shit out of someone and cause them to have skin grafts around their vagina, no less. And just also as an aside, she was not the first person to be scalded and burned by McDonald's coffee. So it turns out the story that we were all fed was bullshit. And so again, here's another story. Now, this might not be quite as cut and dry as that, but it is interesting nonetheless to look further into it. Mr. Khelif contacted the firm, which filed a complaint yesterday for acts of aggravated cyber harassment with the Anti-Online Hatred Center of the Paris Public Prosecutor's Office. The Paris Prosecutor's Office told ESPN it had not yet received the complaint, although it could come as early as Monday. Baldi added he asked for the criminal investigation to determine who initiated the misogynistic, racist, and sexist campaign. Good luck with that, because it's people all over the frickin' world, okay? The unfair harassment suffered by the boxing champion will remain the biggest stain of these Olympic Games, Baldi added. Fans have embraced Khelif in Paris, even as she faced an extraordinary amount of scrutiny from world leaders, major celebrities, and others who have questioned her eligibility or falsely claimed she was a man. It has thrust her in a larger divide over changing attitudes toward gender identity and regulation in sports. So far, they are not defining what the actual issue is here. It stems from the Russian-dominated International Boxing Association decision to disqualify Khelif and fellow two-time Olympian Li Yuting of Taiwan from last year's World Championships, claiming both failed an eligibility test for women's competition that IBA officials have declined to answer basic questions about. Khelif and Lin are allowed to fight under the International Olympic Committee's guidelines on gender eligibility, with both fighters eventually winning gold in Paris in their respective weight classes. For 8 years, this has been my dream, and I'm now the Olympic champion and gold medalist, Khelif said through an interpreter after her gold medal bout Friday against Yang Liu of China. Khelif has faced scrutiny from a range of public figures and a significant number of social media users. Former U.S. President Donald Trump and, quote, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling both weighed in with criticism and false speculation about men competing with women in sports. Although I believe J.K. Rowling found out the truth of this matter and has since apologized and said she was wrong. That also gives my success a special taste because of those attacks. We are in the Olympics to perform as athletes, and I hope that we will not see similar attacks in future Olympics. The IOC has repeatedly reaffirmed the two boxers' right to compete in Paris, with President Thomas Bach personally calling the criticism hate speech. Now, again, if you don't know what I'm about to tell you, you would probably have been triggered about all of this, but there's something a little deeper going on here. So let's get to it. All right, so let's start with this one. Imane Khelif condition explained, fact-checking the XY chromosome at center of gender eligibility controversy. Now, before I go any further, I just want to state for everybody so they remember, because even though I am in the medical field, I I always forget this and I have to like double check myself. It's just a weird thing, but XX chromosomes, if you are genetically tested, stop it, Josie. Stop. If you are genetically tested and you are found to have XX chromosomes, you are genetically defined as a female. XY chromosomes, if you were tested genetically and found to have XY chromosomes, you are genetically a male. Okay, let's get into this and then I'll talk about that a little bit more. The controversy surrounding Algeria's Imane Khelif has not died down. With the female welterweight boxer set to compete for a gold medal on Friday, it once again offers the chance for misinformation surrounding the debacle to come to light. The ongoing controversy surrounding this, along with Yu Ting, remains the loudest talking point of the Summer Games. The pair of boxers have been in the spotlight after it was revealed that the two were banned previously because of a failed gender eligibility test. The International Olympic Committee has supported the boxers' participation. With that said, here's what we know about the facts of Khelif's case and the ongoing conversation that has followed. In most cases, if an individual is revealed to have XY chromosomes, they fall under the male gender. There are exceptions, however, and there are certain conditions that can allow a woman to present XY chromosomes. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about for a second, and then we'll talk more about Khelif. So like I just said, XX chromosome are females, XY chromosomes are males. However, like everything in nature, there are outliers. Now, given these outliers tend to be on, one side of the bell curve in a very small percentage, they happen, they happen. And, there are people who are born with XX chromosomes and they are female. Okay. They could go through, they are genetically a female. They can go through puberty and everything else. Usually around puberty is when things start to get a little bit unusual for them. But there are people that go almost their whole life and not find out until later. They can go through puberty and everything as a male and not find out later until they get genetically tested that they were actually born a biologic female. So their chromosomes are XX, but when they come out, they look like a little boy, and then they're treated like a little boy and raised as a little boy, etc. Maybe always feeling a little odd, and then ultimately finding out that they're a female genetically. And this is Klinefelter syndrome. And but I'm going to focus more today on the other thing that's going on here, which is with Khelif, which is you're born XY, genetically male, okay? But when you're born and you come out, you appear as if you have a vagina. You have a vagina. That's phenotypically female, they call that in medical jargon. Phenotypically female, physically appearing, having characteristics of the phenotype of a woman. Okay. But so the parents, nobody knows that they're actually genetically a male. People can say, well, what do you mean? Don't they test people? No, they don't. When children are born and their gender looks very obvious, they have a vagina, we're going to call it, this is a girl. They have a penis, we're going to call this a boy. This happens every day in hospitals all over the world. Nobody does a genetic test to prove that it's a boy or a girl. They look like a boy, they're a boy. They look like a girl, they're a girl. And then they're raised, as such, as a boy, as a girl. And then more typically for these genetic males, when they reach puberty, they may find things like, this is weird, I'm not getting my period. Why am I not getting my period? And then you go to the doctor and there's a specific workup for that. And even then, they may not get a genetic test and find out that they're a male. Okay. Usually in a country like America, at that point, after you've gone through all the tests, you might do an ultrasound, find like, there's some gonadal strands there, but not actual ovaries or testes. What's going on with this person? Let's get a genetic test. And then you have to break the news to this person and their family, perhaps, that genetically, biologically, they are a male. How devastating would that be? You feel like a woman, you've been raised as a woman, you look like a woman, and then a doctor comes along and tells you when you're 16 or 17 years old, yeah, genetically speaking, you're actually a male. You want to talk about fucking somebody's head up, okay? That is completely and utterly different than a person being born a male, feeling like a woman, and then transitioning to a woman. These people, this is more of a, I want to say, a psychological or spiritual type feeling that they have, more of it, so it's fascinating, all this gender stuff. And I went into this on a podcast I used to do, because when transgender became a thing, became more popular, and I call it a thing. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I guess what I'll call it is when transgender became a fad among the youth, which is what I believe it to be. I started to look into this because I wanted to know what the people like, someone who has Klinefelters, or like someone who has what we used to call in the 90s testicular feminization. What did these groups of people think about the transgendering of our youth? And surprisingly, or maybe not so much, they were outraged by it. Okay. They were also outraged that they were being lumped into a category of transgenderism, when in fact what they had was a medical condition in which they were, I want to just say, like, Mother Nature duped them, tricked them, whatever you want to call it. Either way, it's devastating, right? And I have empathy for those people as well, and I think we all should. So it turns out, okay, that this woman, and that's what I'm going to call her, a woman, Khelif, is, she has one of these disorders. Now, they've created a term for it. DDS stands for differences in sexual development. They're a group of conditions involving genes, hormones, and reproductive organs, according to the National Institute of Health. Some people with DSDs, sorry, not DDS, DSDs that are raised as female may have sex chromosomes other than XX, which is female chromosomes, or potentially have elevated testosterone levels, according to the National Institute of Health. It is not true that athletes with variations in their sex traits, or DSDs, are the same as transgender athletes. Conflating the two is inaccurate. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I wonder if whoever wrote this article realizes that they would be considered bigoted by some people for saying that, when it's just something that, to me is logical. It is not verified that Khelif has a variation in sex traits, or DSDs, according to GLAAD and Interact. So we'll talk a little bit more about the different types, but let's go further down here. Khelif is a woman, not transgender. Khelif is a woman, according to GLAAD and Interact, but they're not going to tell you what her chromosomes are. And the reason they're not going to tell you is, and I believe this to be an issue, because she has privacy. People have the right to privacy with their medical conditions, right? And if she in fact was born genetically a male, which is what I suspect is going on, but I can't confirm, does she have to tell the world, hey, look, I have XY chromosomes, but I was raised a girl. Phenotypically, I look like a girl. That's debatable. She does look somewhat more masculine than other women, but she looks female. So, she's raised that way. She thought, and maybe she didn't find out that she was genetically a male until, like I said, in her puberty, when she was in puberty. And so, and she became a boxer. Perhaps she wanted to box before she found out she was a genetic male, right? This is a very sensitive topic. And I don't know what my opinion is in terms of if she should be allowed, on an international level or whatever, to box as a female when genetically she's a male. It's a sensitive topic. I think for the most part that, yes, she should be able to box as a female. And the reason why is, depending on her medical type of gender disorder, from, that she was born with, just because she has the chromosomal markers as a man, it does not mean she has excessive testosterone. that's not the case. And I'm going to show you some women who are biological females in a minute, and you'll see what I mean. Khelif was one of 2 boxers to fail a gender eligibility test ahead of the World Boxing Championship. These competitions are sanctioned by IBA. The IBA said these okay, so here, this group, the IBA, revealed that Khelif, okay, so here we go, has XY chromosomes, which are most commonly found in, which are like 99% of the time are found in phenotypically appearing males, right? This gets really wonky, right, when you start digging into it. This is what started the controversy in the first place. The group previously stated that athletes did not undergo a testosterone examination, but were subject to a separate and recognized test, whereby the specifics were being confidential, as I believe they should. But IBA president contradicted that statement at a press conference during the Olympics. We got the test results that allowed us to take themselves, and the test showed they have a high level of testosterone, like a man's level of testosterone. Okay, so she may be one of these types of people who are, genotype male, phenotype quasi-female, and then also has elevated testosterone. IOC defended Khelif's eligibility amid the controversy. The 2 athletes were the victims of a sudden and arbitrary decision, and they were suddenly disqualified without any due process. This is a very interesting topic. I don't have an answer for it. I just think it's important to talk about it. The Algerian boxer was born female, registered female, lived her life as a female, boxed as a female, and has a female passport, Mark Adams of IOC said. This is not a transgender case. The organization does not use the gender eligibility test that the IBA utilized. So IBA clearly does genetic testing for your genotype. That's the difference, right? So in the Olympics, they may test you for elevation of testosterone or doping or whatnot. But in IBA, they have taken the stance that if you are genotypically, your genetics are male, you cannot box a genotypically, genetically, biologically, whatever, born female. XY can't box XX. We don't care what you look on the outside or did on the outside. So that's the difference here. Many women can have testosterone, which will be called male levels, and still be women and still compete as women. That's the part where I think it gets a little bit difficult because, in the general population, when you do tests, say you go to your doctor as a woman and you've had children, you're biologically genotypically a woman, and you're having excessive hair growth, say, or, some other things, and they check and your testosterone normal range for women, okay, you have more testosterone. You may be a little more aggressive than other women or than you were when you had lower testosterone. You may have excessive hair growth in places you don't want it. You may have a little more different musculature. And, what if you were a boxer and it's not your fault that now you suddenly have these elevated testosterone levels? Is it maybe from a tumor? I mean, there's so many different things to unpack with this, right? But I think that with some of these more rare gender disorders, if you consistently have elevated testosterone levels, it does create an unfair advantage for you as a boxer when you're boxing other women. So as you can see, it's a complex issue. It's not cut and dry, and they're trying to make it cut and dry. And I think it's devastating. This woman has been harassed and bullied. I don't know that they'll be able to get much recourse when the internets and they bully people mercilessly. It's sort of like they're these anonymous cowards behind keyboards. I had felt a certain way about this before I heard Nate the lawyer talk on it, and then I learned more about it myself. But I would never go online and start saying like awful things to this woman. I might say something like, this is criminal. I think I might have said this is criminal somewhere, or this is unjust. But Josie, stop. Josie, my dog's getting all ramped up. She gets ramped up when I do. Sit down, Josie. Good girl. But even though I said the situation I felt was criminal, I wasn't calling this woman criminal. I wasn't bashing her and sending emails and texts and tweeting at her and calling, I wasn't doing any of that, right? So I feel like you can voice your opinion, but when you start doing the personal attacks, it's like a whole other level, and nobody deserves that. I don't care what they've done or who they are. I don't think it's fair for us to be in judgment like that. But you have a right to do it. You have a right to do it. There's well-documented bad blood between the two organizations. Well, that makes sense because they have different approaches and perspectives on this. And that's a shame because it's going to continue to cause issues. Ultimately, Khelif checked the boxes that are required in order to compete in the 2024 Olympics, while she may have been disqualified from the World Championships. So Khelif herself is not going to verify one way or another. This person just outed her medical tests. I think that's unfortunate. I don't know what country that person's from. If it's from America, I think she does have a legal ground to sue for violating her HIPAA protections. But you may waive that when you take these tests for these organizations. I suspect that you do, but I'm not sure. So, very interesting topic, I think. So let's move on and look a little bit more about this, because I think some of you may or may not have heard of this, but let's get into it. There we go. This is more of a layperson web page that describes some things, but I think it's helpful to sort of discuss it in these terms. So androgen insensitivity syndrome, AIS. And like I said, I knew it as testicular feminization from undergrad and even my medical training as a physician assistant. But these terms are always changing. These are the types of terms that are consistently changing. And again, I think it's just to confuse, conflate, obfuscate, that type of thing. This page was first published in 2000. The text was soon amended to include feedback and some changes. So this person clearly wants to be sensitive to other people. Any speculations on this page, for example, celebrities with AIS, are my own and not those of the AISSG. In May of 2003, several women with AIS strongly objected to the content of this page. They argued that AIS and gender identity disorders are completely different conditions and that it was inappropriate for their condition to be included on the site. After a careful review of the objections, I still believe there are enough physiological and legal similarities between AIS women and transsexual women to make this article relevant. So this author and I probably disagree then, because gender identity disorder is the term, which I'm curious. I don't know if the DSM, the manual that describes the alleged mental disorders that we suffer from in our society in America, includes gender identity disorder and diagnoses people with that who feel they were born in the wrong body. It's this whole topic is just very, very complex, and I don't really have a strong opinion on it, because I think you really need to be working with these individuals and living this type of life to have more solid opinions. So I'll reserve my opinion, but I slightly disagree with this, because I do think that someone who was born with a genetic, anomaly, say like this, and then someone who feels they were born in the wrong body and transitions are two completely separate things. The reason is because people who are born, say, a biological male, express as a female and live their whole life as a female, not even knowing that they're genetically a male. That's not someone who is transitioning, right? They're not consciously suffering until maybe they find out about their genotype. Then the suffering begins. Whereas someone who, throughout their childhood, youth, say, is suffering consistently with thoughts of I'm supposed to be a different gender, and then decides to transition to that different gender. These don't coincide. There's no studies that show, people with AIS transgender more or want to be, go through sex change operations more. I think there's no studies that coincide with that. And so that's why in my opinion, they're two separate issues. So many thousands of women around the world suffer from a disorder known as androgen insensitivity syndrome, or, like I was saying, in old textbooks, testicular feminization syndrome. Perhaps 1 in 20,000 women are affected. The syndrome is of great interest because it proves, though perhaps not to some judges and lawyers, that women can have XY genes, a fact that has considerable significance for genetically XY male to female transsexuals. Some women diagnosed with AIS actually suffer from the even rarer Swyer syndrome, which is what some are alleging Imane Khelif has. Women with AIS look and feel like typical women in every practical, social, legal, and everyday sense. They are women, even though they can generally have testes and XY chromosomes and can never bear children. That's not 100% true, because some of these women don't have ovaries or testes, or they just have little, what we would call streaks, sort of like not fully developed gonads, ovaries, or testes. The fact that a woman has AIS and is genetically a male is often not discovered until puberty, like we talked about, when she does not start to menstruate, and GYN exam reveals the syndrome. And by the way, not always does it reveal the syndrome, but it can. Unlike with male to female transsexual women, no court has ever disputed the right of an AIS woman to legally marry a man and adopt children on the grounds that she's actually genetically XY male. That's not true either, because there was a actress, I don't know if it's Eden Atwood or, yeah, I think it was Eden Atwood, who was genetically a man, but phenotypically a woman, appeared as a woman, raised as a woman, known as a woman, and was later found to be genetically male. And I think it was the UK annulled her marriage. Now, this was back in the day, I don't remember, but that's not true. Legally, there are courts that have found that, almost, however, an adult AIS is physically almost indistinguishable from a male to female transsexual woman who started surgical and hormonal treatment before puberty. So clearly there is a major issue and injustice here. Just want to mention this little caveat here. Again, with the transgender and popular culture, throughout history, and I'm not going to name people because if I'm wrong, I don't want to offend people. But you can look yourself, and there are channels that are around, and there are other deep divers that have presented this information. But look around and look at some of the popular culture figures throughout your lifetime. Go back to the 80s. That's a great time to go back to the 80s and look at some of the supermodels. Look at the way they pose. There was a very strong androgynous style in the 80s. And so some of these supermodels had short haircuts. They wore boxy blazers. And when you look at their pictures now, you may be shocked that you believed that that was a female at the time. That's when I grew up. And some of these supermodels were impossibly tall and thin with the narrowest of hips and just gorgeous looking bodies. And I, as a woman, anorexia and bulimia was really big back then. And it's because this ideal of some of these supermodel women just seemed impossible or unattainable for the normal, adolescent girl. And when I look back now, it's just like just another deception, because many of them were actually biological males. And I believe that's what Victoria's Secret really is. Victoria's Secret is that a lot of these women that they present are actually males, but I'm not going to name who I think that is. And I'm not trying to offend. People have a right to do that, but it's long been known there's something called transgender elite inversion. And a lot of these elite families, long before we knew about it in pop culture, where we see someone like not Angelina Jolie, but Charlize Theron, who adopts African boys and makes them wear pink tutus and transitions them into female. There's a lot of celebrities that are doing that now. It's the quote in thing. And a lot of families across America that I believe are filled with narcissistic mothers, typically, that do this with their children during or prior to puberty. And men are fighting tooth and nail for them to stop. There was a big case in Canada. So, this stuff has been going on throughout history. Even back in the times, if you look, I believe that's where the term queen comes from, when you refer to a a male homosexual who is very effeminate, and you call them queens. Because go back in history and look at some of the queens back in like the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s of different countries. And you tell me if that is a female or if that is a man pretending to be a female, or perhaps, believes they are a female. I'm not sure which, but it would make sense mostly because the way that lineage is passed in a lot of the royal families is, the firstborn male. And maybe you didn't want the kid to be king. So there's just all kinds of games they can play. And I believe they've always played with us. So back to the article. Every fetus, whether genetically male or female, starts life with the capacity to develop either a male or female reproductive system. Well, technically by default, we're all females originally. It's more of a default, I guess, but true. Okay. In AIS, the child is conceived with male sex chromosomes and normal testes, known as fetal gonads, develop and start producing masculinizing androgens. But in some of these rare conditions, the genetic male, either is unable to produce these male hormones because they lack the receptors, or their body is not recognizing these male hormones, ignores them, and therefore the person that has XY genes is, continues to look like a female. And oftentimes these women are beautiful. They're gorgeous. They've got stunning, long legs and beautiful skin and just all sorts of things that make them great supermodels. There are two types of AIS, and honestly, I think that there's more than two types at this point, because as I started to go further and further, I could have done this for days, and I need to stop at some point. So I don't want to add too much confusion to it, but there's more than two types, but most 90% suffer from completely normal female type with external genitalia, but they don't have a uterus. Okay. They don't have a uterus or an open vagina. And that's the complete AIS. So she does talk about the types of grades. So maybe it is two types and then the grades. The remaining 10% suffer from partial, their outward genital appearance varying from almost completely female to almost completely male. And these are people that are born, and these people, when they're born, that there's something wrong. If there's a vagina, you're calling it a girl, you don't realize it's XY. But if there's a vagina and a partial penis, you're like, okay, this is the colloquial term hermaphrodite. They're going to do a genetic test right away and have a discussion with the parents. How would you like to proceed? Do you want to do surgery? So you want to raise her this way, that way? This is a big discussion that people would have. But a lot of times, 90% of the people you don't even know, and you may never find out, depending. Girls with partial AIS are often born with ambiguous genitalia, where it's not clear if it's a boy or a girl. And there's, a lot you can go on about that. But I'm just going to show you down here. So they're saying in the incidence in 1992 in a Danish registry, 1 in 20,400 XY births this occurs in. That's actually a lot more common than I thought it to be. But partial is a lot less. So here, just in some pop culture things, studies have found that although certainly not all women with complete androgen sensitivity have no problems with their female gender identity themselves, and it often leads to normal sex life. Statistically, their leanings towards heterosexuality, lesbianism, or bisexuality. It's no different than the regular public. So, like we were saying before, here's a woman here, Cindy Stone. She is complete androgen sensitivity, and you can look. She looks very much like a woman here. And then right here, Eden Atwood. That's who I talked about before. Just see what. Okay, can't get to that one. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm going to go back. Where am I? Sorry. So Eden Atwood, that was who I was trying to show there. Hold on a second. Okay. You can see tall, thin, beautiful. She's an actress, jazz singer, amazing life story. A Bond girl also, one of the popular Bond girls in For Your Eye Only. I think her name was Carol Cassi. She was a supermodel and she was in that movie. She's a beautiful, stunning woman and was later outed, I'm not sure by who, as a biological male. So that was devastating for her, but she's written a book about it. Here's someone else. 11-year-old Kylie Witcher suffers from AIS, and she's pictured with her mother. It just looks like a normal little girl, right? I mean, she is a normal girl. I mean, you wouldn't know that she had this genetic abnormality. Erica Coimbra was outed as having AIS at the 2004 Olympics. Okay, so there we go. I have to look in that then, because I wonder what they did with that. I wonder what she competed in. We'll have to look at that in a second. Here's Jamie Lee Curtis. She is the one who's long whispered to be a biological male, but she's known as a woman. I don't believe she's ever admitted to it, but there have been lots of throughout the years, even research, people who research in this, including, university professors, have claimed this to be true. I don't know if it's true, but that would be an example. She's got the beautiful long legs and thin and aging well, etc. Famous women with AIS. Other women suspected based on limited evidence. So we've got Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth I, Mrs. Wallace Simpson. And then this one was interesting. The Black Dahlia murder case, a basis for a movie. Apparently, they're saying may be related to AIS because Elizabeth Short may have been, had an underdeveloped vagina because she had this. And the person who dismembered her may have been outraged by this. So I did not know that. I thought that was sort of interesting. Then there's some unsubstantiated suggestions that Charlize Theron, Frances McDormand, Hilary Swank, all of these people have adopted children, and Renee Zellweger. For obvious and understandable reasons, women with this disorder are not likely to admit it. Eden Atwood is a rare and brave example. Absolutely. A search of the internet suggests as possibly having AIS, the ultimate female icon, Marilyn Monroe, Katharine Hepburn, Jessica Biel, Daryl Hannah. These are all people. And then actress Nicole Kidman also often appears, despite her admission that she was seeking help for fertility issues in these searches. But she did subsequently have a natural, born child. So, and then there's a supermodel. I think there's many that just don't talk about it. I think there's many actors and actresses as well that don't talk about it. Now people born, they're doing it freely. It's more accepted. And so it's different. But this woman here, Han Odelia, age 27, ultimately just came out and said it because she was just tired of people constantly accusing it. I guess Gazelle Buchan was another one, but then she had a biological son. And that's why you have to be careful. I'm not seeing any of these people fact that I know for a fact have any of these things, because as a woman, if someone told me, they suspected that I had it, it would make me feel bad, right? It's got to make you feel bad. You got to come to terms with that in some way. But then I'd say, fuck it, I don't care, because those women tend to be very beautiful. And so, okay, fine, you think I'm beautiful, right? Jamie Lee Curtis, here's another one. There's a lot of speculation. She's never really come out and confirmed it. Kim Novak, another one. Maria Jose Martinez Patino. And then here's one, actually. Look how beautiful this girl is. She was a tennis player, Sarah Gronick. She had genital surgery at age 19, not because she wanted to transgender, but because she had ambiguous genitalia. And apparently when the Women's Tennis Association found out, she was allowed to continue to participate as a female, but her competitors refused to play against her. So, that's what happened with her. So I think all this is very, very interesting. So let's just see. I think I mentioned Imane Khelif is going to sue for all this cyber attack and bullying. She feels there's probably someone who is at the head of it, but my guess is there's just too many people just randomly doing it, because people just seem to love to hate on other people's shit. They just love to do it, right? They just love to do it. So let me just see something here. I'm curious about that other thing that we talked about with the female 2004 Olympic female with AIS. Let's see what happened with her. Failed gender test forces Olympian to redefine. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, this is something a little different, but let me just go over here. This is something a little different. I didn't find that one, but it turns out this is not the first time this shit has come up, right? Not surprisingly. So let's see. Can I find it? Swire syndrome. That's one of the types of things. Jamie Lee Curtis, Swire, transgender. We talked about that. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. July 23rd, 2012. Today, Sandarajan works as a bricklayer in her small village in southern India. This is a female. On a stiflingly hot Sunday in June, Santhi Sandarajan, is watching Star TV's 24-hour cricket channel in her home in Katakorichi, a rural village in southern India. Okay, and they go on to talk about a 31-year-old former elite middle distance runner. Sandarajan bought the house she is lounging in, the TV she's watching, with prize money from her running days. It doesn't look like much, but I bet in India it's a lot. She's got restless energy, a wide smile. She's slight, 120 pounds soaking wet, but walks with a champion's confidence. During a break in the cricket game, a promo for the Olympics comes on. I know her, she says through an interpreter, cocking her head towards Krishna Punia, the Indian discus thrower on screen. We used to train together. Sandarajan is from the lowest caste in India, the Dalits, who were previously known as the Untouchables. Sports offered a chance out of the life of back-breaking labor and desperate poverty that she was raised in, and she ran as if her life depended on it, breaking national records, winning hundreds of medals. At age 25, she found herself in Doha, Qatar at the Asian Games, the second largest multi-sport event in the world. Competing against athletes from 45 countries, she won a silver medal. But she enjoyed this triumph for barely a moment before her career was over, not because of injury or doping. Her body betrayed her in another way. She failed a gender test. In that instant, in 2006, Sandarajan inadvertently became embroiled in ongoing, unresolved, and frequently embarrassing debate over what makes an athlete female enough to compete as a woman. For as long as women have participated in the Olympics, the organization's regional governing bodies, as well as most international sports federations, have policed competitions trying to root out men posing as women. Mandatory testing of all female athletes began in 1966. It was in response to suspicious activity from communist bloc countries that had men disguised as women. Right. So that's, yeah, you can look into it. So, okay. The world governing body for track and field required all female athletes to submit to a gender test, a crude pageant referred to as a nude parade. Gosh, that's got to be humiliating. Sometimes they would have exams. Those who passed were given certificate of femininity that they were required to present at all competitions. Fascinating. 2 years later, for the Olympics in Mexico City, to quiet outrage over the humiliating parades, the International Olympic Committee officially replaced them with a cheek swab to test for an inactive X chromosome, which typically presents itself only in women. And while it was less based than the parades, this test didn't help clarify the issue. About 1 in 1,000 have some intersex condition. ambiguous genitals, internal sex organs that don't match their external ones, or an extra chromosome such as men with an XXY combination. Yeah, and there's some other really weird ones, like super bizarre ones. The IOC later switched to a DNA test, but after criticism from most medical authorities, these tests were hardly conclusive. Sports federations discontinued mandatory gender testing. The IAAF stopped the practice in 91. The IOC, so there you go. The IOC doesn't check this. That's why with Khelif, it's, it's not an issue, right? Because they're not going to genetically test. It's like, don't ask, don't tell, right? On June 22nd, a month before the London Games, the IOC released a new policy in an effort to sidestep the gray area of defining sex. This time, the ability to compete as a woman will not be defined as chromosomes, DNA, or genitals, but by hormone levels. Okay, there you go. So that means that the Olympics, they actually tested hormone levels for Khelif, and they were not found to be too high. That's what that tells me. So Sandajaran grew up, in a hut, no bathroom, no running electricity. And, a lot of people still live this way. I told my kids this all the time. The majority of the world is poverty stricken. What we consider poverty in America is billionaire status in India and some of these other countries. She had her first competition in 8th grade. Her school, she got her tuition paid. After high school, she got a scholarship. She lived to run. I remember seeing my mother eating hers without chutney, and it always made me cry. A lot of these people, their parents will do any sacrifice to help them succeed. She went to college. She was triumphant. It was her dream. The day after her triumph, the IAF team, Dr. Kumar, asked her to come in for tests. Although she says he didn't say what they were. The doctor took blood, then had her undressed. He brought in 4 doctors. Gynecologist, endocrinologist, and left the room. Sundarajan says the doctors, none of whom spoke Tamil, her native language, examined her for 30 minutes. The next day, she was told to leave the game without explanations. This must have been terrible. She learned the reason for her dismissal at the same moment the rest of India did. Oh my God. She watched incredulously as it was announced that she had been stripped of her medal because she was not really a woman. Can you imagine this? She was brought in for the gender test after the chaperone for the doping test noticed something unusual. So she was diagnosed with AIS. That's unbelievable. Now, this is interesting because they're saying in 91 they banned that. But yet these people did this test on her, didn't even tell her what it was for. She didn't even know that she was biologically a male. And she found out on national television. How humiliating must that have been? She returned to her village in humiliation and promptly fell into serious depression. No kidding. She tried to kill herself. I'm not surprised, by ingesting a type of poison. A friend found her vomiting. Everyone looked down on me. Everyone was looking at me in this new way. Is she a man? Is she a transvestite? It ruined my life, my family's life. This is so sad. The stigma was about more than her body. It was also about the idea that she had cheated, but she didn't know. And like I said before, oftentimes these people don't know. You might think people have to know if they don't menstruate. Maybe not. Some of these people are very, very thin, and they may be told that their body fat is so low that they're not producing enough estrogen to menstruate, and so they don't get genetically tested still, especially in a country like India where everything is expensive. So there's a short documentary about her. This is devastating. This got to be so sad. It's not an isolated case. Caster Semenya, a runner from a poor rural village in South Africa, went through a similar ordeal in 2009. Hours before her Berlin victory, the challenge to Semenya's gender was leaked to the international press. So, this is not giving us any answer in terms of, I think the real issue here is that the Olympics needs to get their shit together. They need to get their shit together and come up with a sound policy that they stick to, because they said in 91 they stopped doing genetic tests. They just test testosterone levels. But in this woman's case, In 2012, they tested it. Didn't even tell her. I mean, I just, wow. And what, I just don't, it's sad. And so why did they test her genetically? And why did she get kicked out? And there was another woman we just read who looked like it happened to her as well. So this is not the first time. I keep thinking the Eminem lyric. It's not the first time controversy. It is the first time. I don't know. Sorry. I'm getting tired now. It's time for me to go. I just wanted to say the issue is much deeper than it would first appear. And so I find it fascinating. I hope this was informative, educational for everyone that listened. And let's just head out with a let's show this picture here. Whoops, that's not the one I wanted. Hold on one second. Okay. We'll do this one. And just play our new jam on the channel. This is from a group called the song's called My Way from Nefx. Jam, right?
Come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. We're taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer.
What you say?
Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what